Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Routing Loop. I am joined by my good friend Alex. Say hello,
Hello.
Alex. How,
Hello,
how long is
hello,
it?
everyone.
How long has it been since we've done a show together?
Oh man, I think the last one we did was about IPv6. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah, no surprise there. Um, no, it's awesome to actually be doing a show with you again. We hardly ever get a chance to do speaking or anything like that together. We should probably plan on that.
We
So
should
you learn a
actually,
couple
yeah,
things.
yeah, we should do better at this. But I'm super excited to be joining you today and super excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, VPC Lattice. So
Yes,
yes.
yes. So we're continuing. For those of you who don't know, the Routing Loop is a show that's dedicated to AWS networking, building with networking, and talking about networking, troubleshooting networking, all of that fun stuff. And we've been doing our application networking series, focusing on Lattice and VPC resource endpoints. So we started it off with Tom, and Tom was talking about the fundamentals, right? And I believe Matt was hosting Tom in that show.
Yeah.
And then we kind of switched it up where then I actually was a guest last week and I went over some common use cases. And Tom was the host. And of course, Alex normally hosts, and now she's the guest, and I am actually hosting for her to actually show us how to actually do these things in terms of doing demos. So
Yeah.
without further ado, I'm going to be quiet and I'm going to let you kick it off, Alex, because I think you've got a pretty packed schedule, don't you?
Yes, we do have a super packed schedule. Hey Ken, good to see a lot of our old friends here
Yep,
joining
yep,
us
yep.
on Twitch Live. Yes, we have a packed schedule. We have three demos that we've prepared for today. The first one is VPC Lattice Services. This is something that you folks probably are already familiar with, so we're going to brace through it a bit. And then we're going to talk about support for VPC resources and see how that works in VPC Lattice. And we're going to try to demo out the service network endpoints. Now,
Nice.
if the gods of demo are today with us and are going to help us have this running super smoothly, that's great. If not, we're going to come back. So don't worry. We'll have this. We have this show next week as well. We have already things planned and scheduled, and we're super excited about it. But there's always time, so no pressure.
No pressure.
We also have Anusha with us. She's going to help
Absolutely.
us put links in the chat about all things VPC Lattice, the Get Started guide. So if you folks are interested in learning more about VPC Lattice and you're new to this service, is the first time you're hearing about this, please make sure to check out the links Anusha is posting. Okay, so I would say let's get things started. And the first demo is setting up VPC Lattice services. Um, this is kind of our architecture. Super simple, straightforward, easy to understand. We have a client VPC and a client in the client VPC. We have a VPC Lattice service network. We have a service VPC with the service in it. It's a super, super, super simple service. By the way, I'm not great at coding, so I just created a super simple web app in Flask that actually returns the IP address of the client that connects to it, and it's listening on port 80. Super straightforward. Should be really, really easy for us to follow. Now, we have some things that are already set up. Step one would be to create your VPCs, but if you already have those, you'll see that we already have them, so we can brace through that. Um, Obviously, deploy the web app in the service VPC. Make sure you configure it appropriately. This is the code. If you folks are interested, there's plenty of code options out there that return your IP addresses in much nicer formats. This one doesn't even do a carriage return afterwards. You'll see it's super super basic. But yeah,
It's how a
worry
networking
not.
person does it.
It's exactly how a networking person does it. Yes. We're running the app and we test it. So let's see all of this, how it's deployed. I'm going to bring up my AWS account here and let's walk through it. So I already have my client VPC here deployed and my service VPC. We're going to get to the other two VPCs in a second as we talk about resources and service network endpoints. Now, I also have my EC2 instance here. Let's see, the web app instance. It's running, the web server is running. So let's do a small test and let's see if that works. I already saved here the IP address of the instance, and I think you folks can actually see it.
Yep, yep, yep.
Guess what? It's an IPv6 address. So use IP.
I was going to say, what kind of address is this?
This is an IPv6 address. If you folks are interested in finding out more about IPv6, we also have a repost article that has all the V6 resources. It's called Getting Started with IPv6 on AWS. Hopefully, Anusha can help us with that as well.
Mhm.
You find it, Anusha. If you don't find it, it means we're doing something wrong. So yeah, if you folks are interested, give that a look. You'll see a lot of IPv6 addresses today, even though the focus is not IPv6. I love IPv6, which you probably already know.
Probably figured that out. Yes.
Uh, we have a couple of other things as well. We already created. So let me open the VPC console here. So besides the VPCs and that web app instance, I already have some presets for VPC Lattice. So first, I have the target group. This target group is very similar to a load balancer target group in the way you set it. Um, Protocol version HTTP, port 80. I've created it a while back, as you folks can see, and it has my instance in the target group. Health checks look healthy. Everything is good. Now, the target group is the target group, but in front of the target group, we also need a VPC Lattice service. So once we have the target group created, we create the service. Mental model wise, it's like creating a target group for a load balancer and then putting a load balancer in front of it. So
Mhm.
let's check out the service here. It's called IP Finder because it gives you the IP address of the client. Not really good with names, Jamie, here, but
I
I
mean,
can something.
it's what it is, right?
Yes, super fun. So yeah, I've defined a service. Very important for the service. I do want a custom domain name. So my service is called ipfinder.example.com. The reason why this is important is because we're going to be configuring a bit of the DNS part as well. So you folks get the look and feel of that as well. So I've defined the service. I don't have configured any authentication authorization part in Lattice. You can absolutely do that. You can enhance your security posture, and the authentication authorization part can be dealt with by VPC Lattice. But for our demo purposes, we want to see this working. So I didn't adventure on the paths of creating complex authorization policies. You folks will find a lot of examples in the documentation, and probably one of my favorite ones is the one where you can authorize anyone in your organization to access your VPC Lattice service, and if the client is not part of the AWS organization, then traffic is not authorized. Super simple, super straightforward. Now, I have the service. It is all good. Routing rules. I have a listener on port 80. It's the default action forwarded to the web app target group. So super straightforward. If you folks have questions, shoot them in the channel, in the chat. Happy to answer any and all of them. So far, we're pretty foundational. Now, I also have something here which is very important. Enabled logs, access logs for the service. I chose to export them in CloudWatch. I have a log group. You can choose to export them in S3 as well, or in Kinesis Data Firehose. And why is that important? Well, we'll see, because you're going to get to see all of the flows and all of the interactions between clients and services in a really, really nice way. Got it? So, first things first, what we need to do. Well, we need a service network, right? If you folks remember our diagram, the first thing is after we've created the service and the VPCs and the target groups, we need the service network. So let's create a service network. I'm going to name my service network core shared services service network. I can give it a description. Service network for core services. You can name it whatever you want at the end of the day. I will also associate the service here because I've already created it. And I don't have yet any resource configurations. We're going to get to that in demo number 2. I will also associate the client VPC here. So let's see, client VPC 1. I will select a security group. I'll just select the default security group. Make sure here, super important, and something that a lot of folks miss is allowing traffic in the security group from clients in the VPC. If the security group doesn't allow traffic to go into the service network, then your traffic is not going to be permitted. So I've already updated this default security group to contain rules that allow for all traffic on both IPv4 and IPv6. You can obviously filter it to a more granular step, but I've just let it like this.
We got a quick question from Dominic. Can we build
Awesome.
similar queries or dashboards based on our queries in CloudWatch to have monitoring in real time, like VPC flow logs?
Absolutely. You can take the logs. We'll see the format of the logs in a second in that log group that I created. And you can absolutely have those logs exported. You can play with them. You can filter them. You can do anything you do, for example, today with the access logs of an application load balancer. They're much richer than those access logs. They give you a lot of information about the client and the VPC and the service and the identity. We'll see. Stay tuned for when we get to actually test this and see how it works. Okay, so moving forward, network access. We won't configure again anything here. You can absolutely go back and activate network access through AWS IAM after you've created the service network. If at some point in the future you decide you want to add the security component to it, but you can also leave it like this. Service networks are a shareable construct, so you can share them through Resource Access Manager. For our demo today, everything is just in a simple account, so there's no cross-account sharing requirements. But again, if you needed to do it at a later time, you can go in Resource Access Manager and configure a resource share and add your service network to that resource share.
Just make sure you have allow sharing selected like Alex does here, because we do add that extra piece of if we absolutely know this service network needs to be private, we can lock it down so that you can't mistakenly share it out.
Exactly. And last but not least, you saw that I pre-enabled monitoring at the service level. You can also enable monitoring at the service network level. And we'll see that the logs that the service network owner sees and the logs that the service owner sees are exactly the same.
Yes.
So this helps with troubleshooting so much because I, as an app owner, not that I am an app owner, I don't even know how to code a simple Flask app, but if I were an app owner and I would have to look at flow logs today, I would be like, I don't understand anything from these flow logs, man. Like, what are you telling me here? Those flow logs are super useful for network owners, right? We know what those mean. We know what those IP addresses mean and all those numbers. But app owners are used to look at app access logs, right? Network people are used to look at VPC flow logs. And there's kind of this disconnect between the two, right? So here's where Lattice brings together these two personas. And it's a simple feature, but super powerful to be able to look at the same thing when you're troubleshooting something, both from the network perspective and from the app perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and enable. this, and I'll put my access log here. I have a
And then
core.
one thing too to note is if you're doing flow logs and all that other fun stuff to the same bucket, which you should, as Alex was highlighting for troubleshooting, everything in the right place. Because of the fact that you can actually edit your flow log keys, do not remove your timestamps from your flow logs because it is very helpful to have all the
Yeah,
timestamps match for when something goes wrong. I've actually seen it.
exactly. Yep,
It's like, we
yep.
don't need this time thing. What's this time thing for?
Oh my God. Okay, cool. So we've enabled service access logs. So the core network will export access logs for when clients access services in the service network. And we'll also do resource access logs. We don't have resources just yet. We're going to create them, but it's important to have them here. So I'm going to just put them in the same log group, and you can put them in the same log group, different log group. You can choose what you want to do with them. For simplicity's sake, I'll just choose to put them all in the same place. And
So Ken has a
that is
question.
it.
Is it possible to use the logs to integrate with APM tools to have full tracing?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, for sure. You will get from these logs the fact that a client is accessing a specific endpoint, timestamps, what was the request type, which is so important, the request path. So you'll see all that information. So the moment you have an entire ecosystem of monitoring tools, you can absolutely intake these logs and process them and stitch them together with all the other things that you're monitoring for your application. So yes, 100%. Okay, I think this is it. We're just going to create a service metric, and we're going to wait for it a couple of minutes to create. A couple of minutes. I was too
I
generous
was going to ask you,
here.
who did you pay to get that to be done so quickly?
It was so quickly, yes. And I already have the service association. You folks see it here. Um, every service association gets an ID. I've gotten asked by a lot of customers, actually, what does SNSA mean? Well, it means Service Network Service Association. So it's really, really simple and straightforward. Um, this is the ARN of the association. This is my service name. I didn't configure any tags. You can do a lot of cool things with tags and automation.
Which you
And
should. You should.
which you should. By the way, this is exactly where I was getting at. This demo is in the console. Some of you may be like, oh man, console, I want everything automated. You can absolutely automate everything. Reason we're doing it in the console is because I think, and we think, it's the easiest way for everyone to grok what we're doing. And why?
Right.
If you see just some code lined up and executing, it's pretty hard to visualize the actual configuration. So this is a really good place to see how things work. And then obviously for production purposes, you would have everything automated. You wouldn't do ClickUps in the console. Okay, so we have one service associated and we have one VPC associated, right? So we see it here. SNVA, right? Service Network
Mhm.
VPC Association, really cool. This is still creating progress. Probably we're gonna refresh it. It's gonna be active. This is our VPC. We again don't have tags, but it's all good. So I have the Service Association and I have the VPC Association. Now, technically, what I could do is go test it out. I will test it out with the service name. So the default service name, let's go here to services. And here for IP Finder, you see that when you create a service, you get a really ugly FQDN that's managed by VPC Lattice in public hosted zones. It's automatically generated. And you can absolutely use it without any custom DNS configuration. So let's see how that works. I'm going to go here into my EC2 instances in my client VPC. I am using EC2 Instance Connect and I'm using IPv6. Guess what? So very important. You don't need public IPv4 addresses to SSH into your instances anymore. You don't need to have public keys and maintain them. So please make sure you leverage these features wisely. So let's see how this works. Let's do a curl. It's going to be a super, super straightforward one. Let me see here. How can I add this as a test? Okay, curl, curl. Doop, doop, doop. Okay, 480. Nice. I told you that it doesn't even do carriage return. It doesn't.
Carriage returns are evil in networking. Let's just leave it at that.
Yep. So this is my IP address. Let's see if it's actually true. I can do an if config here, and I can see that my IPv6 address is this one. Now you see that I've actually, even though I didn't specify in the curl that I want to go to v6, I chose v6 automatically. This is because all VPC Lattice services at QDNs are dual stack. So you have both v4 and v6 capabilities. My instance is dual stack, so it has both a v4 and a v6 address. So at the OS level, IPv6 was preferred. You will see that a lot. So it's all cool. It works, but it works with the default name, not with my custom domain name. So what do I need to do now? Well, I need to configure DNS. This will be the last step for our services, because at the end of the day, I do want to access this ipfinder.example.com using the name that is really easy to remember, right? So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go into Route 53. And the first thing we're going to be creating is a Route 53 profile. This allows us to simplify how we manage DNS, private DNS specifically, DNS firewall rules, a lot of DNS configuration for many VPCs in our accounts. So super, super cool release, and we can actually paste in the chat, Anusha, the launch blog for Resolver profiles. That was really cool, cool one. In the meantime, I'm gonna call it for shared services US East 1, something like that, and I'll create a profile. That's it. It's that easy. Now, in this profile, I mentioned that you can manage DNS firewall rules, private hosted zones, resolver rules. You can associate the profile to VPCs. You can put tags on it for automation purposes. So there's a lot of things you can do. We're going to start with the very simple parts. So we have the profile, and we need to create a hosted zone. So I'm going to do IP finder.example.com. You may be asking yourselves, well, why ipfinder.example.com and not example.com? And then ipfinder is an entry in ipfinder.example.com. We have a blog post that talks about DNS strategies for VPC Lattice and how you can adopt it in existing environments. So I'm just going to do the ipfinder.example.com so that I don't catch more of the example.com services that I may have in my environment with this private hosted zone. So let's say I have another shared service or core service in example.com, that won't be matched by this private hosted zone. So I'll do this private hosted zone, US East 1. I do need to associate it with a VPC. First and foremost, I had the default VPC, but I'll just do here, and I will create the hosted zone. Now, this hosted zone is created, doesn't have any entries in it. We're going to see in a second how we're going to add those entries. We do have to create the alias record for the VPC Lattice FQDN. So first, before we create that, let's add this private hosted zone to our profile. So we go to Profiles, Private Hosted Zones, and we want to associate a private hosted zone with the profile. That's about it. Now it's getting associated. And we will associate this profile as well with the VPC, the client VPC. So, which one is the client VPC? Good question. Let's find it here. Our client VPC ID is this one. Awesome. Let's search for it. This is our client VPC, and we've associated with it. Now, we have in the profile one private hosted zone and one VPC. Perfect. The only thing we need to do now is create the entry for the alias record. So I'm going to do one thing because that's going to be a CLI-driven action. I'll bring back this one. And this is the step we need to do. So first thing, I'll create a file. I already have the file. In the file, you do need to specify the resource record parameters. You find these in the console. So exactly the hosted zone ID and the name of the service, the FQDN, which I already have. And I'll just apply this change to my hosted zone. So I'm going to leave these slides here so you folks know where we stand. And I'm going to do this in the background here. Jamie, you gotta help me say something funny while I'm doing this.
So I have to entertain everybody as you're setting all this up.
Exactly. Yes.
Not
Are there
ask you
any
questions and slow
questions?
you down any further.
No, if
I
we
guess
want to finish these demos, no.
I can address something that Dominic had mentioned in terms of. I'll bring this up. He says in terms of latency, from your experience, which
Mhm.
service can be better, VPC Lattice versus Private Link versus VPC peering in the same region? And I put an explanation in the chat, but I'll just kind of highlight it that when you're looking at something like VPC Lattice, remember VPC Lattice is a proxy, right? It's a big proxy. It has a bunch of moving parts. And that proxy is built on software or on top of EC2 instances on a fleet that we are hosting on top of AWS. When you're looking at that compared to anything else that's built on top, your latencies are always going to be the slowest point or the slowest part of your communication. If you're using a T2 micro, that's going to be your slowest part. Now, keep in mind that when you're creating rules, as Alex is showing or has shown, or when you're creating target groups or things within those multiple pieces for Lattice, and even Private Link, if you're using Private Link and a network load balancer behind, your slowest part is going to be two pieces. One, whatever it is that you're running on the target and the target size. And two, any of the rules that you're configuring that have to be evaluated as you go through, like your path-based routing, all of that fun stuff, right? But that type of addition is minute compared to the larger scheme of things, unless you go absolutely crazy and try to build as many as possible. When you're comparing that to peering, peering is a connection methodology, and there isn't any fleet of EC2 instances behind it. What peering essentially does is it attaches the routing tables of one VPC to the routing tables of another. And you can get some incredible speed. So if you're doing advanced networking, advanced network placements, 400 gig, all that fun stuff, sticking to the same AZs, peering is just going to convey that over to the other VPC that you have. So kind of comparing Private Link and Lattice to peering is almost an apples to oranges comparison, because the Lattice and the VPC Lattice and the Private Link is like driving a car over the top of a road, and that road would be peering. So that's the
Yeah.
long-winded. Did I do well? Are you ready to go to the next piece?
I like that analogy, like you're driving a car on top of the road and the peering is the road. Yeah, I love that. In the meantime, thank you, Jamie. That was perfect, perfectly on time. Because we've updated DNS, and DNS resolution for the client works for the custom name. So let's see how our hosted zone looks like. We have ipfinder.example.com here, and we have the A and quad A alias records with that really ugly DNS QDN that gets generated automatically for my service, which
You
is
want to
perfect.
quickly tell them why alias is better than CNAME?
Oh, yes, because it's just one, first and foremost, I think that's the first thing that comes to mind is just one DNS resolution. You don't have to do two queries. For CNAME, you get the answer and then you do another query. So on AWS, the alias A and alias quad A records are recommended. In this case, you folks see that I've put them at the apex of the private hosted zone. Default CNAME is not supported at the apex for a hosted zone. Also, like speeds up DNS resolution. Really straightforward. And I had to do it using the CLI. We can talk about roadmap stuff, but if you folks love the console, let us know in the chat if you want this to be supported in the console. CLI is pretty straightforward as
It
well,
is.
but then it took like 2 seconds.
Also, we don't
Okay.
charge for alias resolution, and the
Oh
TTL
yeah,
is smaller,
that's
much
true.
smaller.
That's true. That's true. Okay, so we did from the client, we tried the DNS resolution for both IPv4 and IPv6. Works perfectly fine. You see here the link local v4 addresses and the ULA v6 addresses that are used by VPC Lattice. Again, keep in mind to allow traffic to these addresses from your instances, from your clients in the VPC to the service metric. Now let's do the curl. So curl ipfinder.example.com should be pretty awesome. And I can actually do a -4 here if you guys want, so that I can also see the v4 address. Not too interested in the v4 address, to be
I
very
was going to say, for
honest.
you, V4, what's all this about?
Well, it's there. It's there. It works. We want to show it works, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so this is our first demo. It's complete. We're good. Everything works. How was this, Jamie? Too fast, too
How
slow?
fortuitous. No, this is first. This is good. This is good. We got you've eaten up half the time, so you have 2 more demos left.
All
This is
good,
we're
all
doing
good.
great.
Uh, you're very positive, Jamie. I love that.
I try to be. I
Okay.
try to be.
Let's see demo number 2, setting up VPC Lattice resources. And Lattice came to support resources with a couple of new components. So let's see what those components are. Let me remove my slides here and add this one. So if we scroll here to private link in Lattice, you folks see that I have resource gateways are new, resource configurations are new, and endpoints are updated. So we'll get to endpoints at the last demo, hopefully, if the gods of demo help. What we need to do? Well, first, let's review our VPCs. We have our resource deployed in a resource provider VPC. What is our resource, you may ask? Well, it is my first attempt at deploying an RDS database. So, just so you folks know, it worked the first time, actually. It was very easy. No one can say now that Netric people don't know databases, right?
Right, right, right.
So here's my database. I have a cluster. Actually, not just a single instance, because I want high
Big time.
availability. It's amazing. Okay, and I have a writer instance and I have a reader instance. This is great. It all worked to begin with.
Is
Now,
it all on IPv6?
it is dual stack because RDS supports IPv6 as well, of course,
Right.
of course.
I had to give you that in.
Perfect. So, first things first, for Lattice to be able to talk to the resource that I'm defining, it needs an entry into that VPC that contains the resource. That entry is the resource gateway. So, I am going to go to resource gateways here. I am going to create a resource gateway. I'm going to say RG service provider VPC one, not service, sorry, resource. I will
And as
make it to
Alex
dual
is
stack.
just a note too, as Alex is filling this in, let's say you wanted to start with the actual resource configuration first, which you could. you will be prompted within there to either associate it to a resource gateway, or you can create one. So you can, we've tried our best within the console so that whatever entry point you start to work on creating a resource configuration and a resource gateway, it will prompt you for all the missing pieces that you don't have. But the way that Alex is doing it is a bit methodical, which is the way we recommend. Go through and understand all the pieces that you want. You know you're going to need a resource gateway. Might as well create it with all the things that you need and all the placements that you
Yeah.
need within the subnets, so you don't make a mistake. And then you create your resources and then associate that to the gateway. I'll shut up now.
Yeah. That's perfect. So I have a name, address type is dual stack. I've selected the VPC. It's the resource provider VPC. The resource gateway is and should be deployed as a highly available construct across AZs. So I've selected the private subnet in this VPC for each of the two AZs. I've attached the default security group. Again, you can attach up to 5. You can do cool things with the security group filtering part, and ensures zero trust inside the VPC of who can access and who cannot access the resource gateway, or the resource gateway can and cannot access various resources. But we're keeping it simple. So I've created the resource gateway. That was that easy. Now, once I have that entry into the VPC for VPC Lattice, I have to create the resource, right? So resource configurations, here is where it's going to be really awesome. I'm going to call it resource config database 1. It is a single resource type. So I'm not going to create a resource group. You can also create a resource group if you want to. And I'm going to select here ARN. You see that you can select based on if you do a single, you can do IP address or DNS name. Child resource config is always part of a resource group. All of these things are detailed in the documentation, but for our purposes of the demo today, we're going to focus on the ARN. We need the resource gateway, so we're just going to select the resource gateway we've just created. If I select actually RDS here, I will see already my RDS cluster. So I can select my cluster directly. I don't need to go find the ARN. It's amazing. Usability. I love the console folks who work through this.
Yeah.
Okay. I will allow association with shareable service networks. This is a very important security construct. I won't share the resource config because I mentioned that I only have settings in one account, but if you have multiple accounts, you can absolutely share it. And I will enable access logs, of course, because I want to see all the good stuff. And I'll use CloudWatch, and I'll use my log group for resources. You can add tags, again, optional. And I'm going to go ahead and create the resource config. And the resource config is actually up and running. And this was so fast, right? Amazing.
A quick note on the resources. When we selected the ARN for RDSs, one of the biggest advantages for ARNs are, what does it stand for again, ARN? AWS Resource Name. The main reason why that's very beneficial is as the cluster that Alex had created expands and it contracts, the ARN will automatically stuff any children resources in and out. Currently, the only thing that we support right now is RDS, but if you can think of any other AWS services, please contact your account team and say, we need a PFR. This is our methodology of getting new resources in. We're looking to do this with Kafka. If anyone wants managed Kafka to be represented with ARNs, because that can expand and shrink, just go ahead and put those in there because the service team is eagerly awaiting your requests.
Absolutely. Also, really important, there's a question from Ken here. For resources, you can use on-prem IPs, assuming it's routable or not. You can absolutely use on-prem IPs in resource configurations or DNS names that are publicly resolvable. The only requirement is for the VPC where you drop that resource gateway, right? That's essentially the way in which Lattice can reach to your resource. It's a VPC that has IPs that are routable on-prem. Therefore, the resource gateway is able to send packets through that path, through that highway, right, to your on-prem IPs and get them to be able to be accessed within the service network. So that's the
The,
only requirement.
the one note on that is if the IP address that you have on-prem is publicly routable over the internet, you can't use those IPs. But what you
Yes.
can do is you can create a publicly resolvable Route 53 domain name, put all the IP addresses in there, give them FQDNs, and then use the FQDN as your resource.
Yes, yes. DNS is amazing. Use
Yes, it
DNS
is.
as much as possible. Okay, so we have our resource config. What do we do with it now? Well, we associate it with the service network. So we go here into the service network. We have resource config associations. None so far. I am going to create an association and I'm going to put the resource config here and I'm going to save. And that's it. Really easy, really straightforward. Nothing weird about it. It's creating progress. We're going to probably refresh it. You see that this is the main resource config, and these are the child ones, one for each of the database nodes. One is the writer, one is the read-only one. Awesome. This is it. This is all we needed to do. If we go here in the Service Network Resource Association, we get all the details, the resource configuration, everything you need related to this resource. Now, we want to access this resource, right? So let's see what we do. You see that if we click on this Service Network Resource Association, we don't get anywhere a DNS name, right? We need a DNS name. The very cool thing is you'll see once you click on the child DNS entries, you have your DNS name here. It's a private DNS entry domain, and you also have that FQDN, right? That is part that generated automatically for VPC Lattice. And this FQDN actually means Service Network Resource Association, right? So we have SNSA, SNVA, SNRA, really easy to remember. Nothing special there. We're going to test first with this DNS name. So let's go to our instance here. Let's do a dig first. Let's see what it resolves to. We have an IP address from a different CIDR block. It is an IP prefix that is, it's managed by VPC Lattice fully. It is separate from the 169.254, but it's again not taking IP addresses from your VPC CIDRs. So let's
Fun
do
fact
this.
about the 129 is it's not routable. It will not go over a router. And the main
Yeah,
reason for this is security. So that if you create a service network, no one can tap into it and you can't route anything from it anywhere else without going through a service.
exactly. So I'm going to try now to actually connect to this database here. Let's see if my commands here actually serve serve my purpose. I'm gonna take this one again. Okay, I've saved here the ports and the passwords and everything. Oh, okay. And I have to enter the password, which I hopefully have it saved somewhere here as well. Uh, my password is stored in Secrets Manager. And here it is, right? I've connected from the client VPC through the Service Network Association to the Service Network Associated resource. Now, the thing that doesn't work is the private DNS part, right? So if I would like to see this private DNS name here, you see that I kind of get the one in the other VPC, right? Like it's not helpful because I don't have any connectivity to that VPC. But there is a way for me to fix that. You folks guess what it is?
Nothing in the
Well,
client in the comments.
no one,
I'm not going to steal
no one,
thunder.
nothing.
Nobody saying.
Well, it is the classical private DNS configuration for private hosted zones. So I'm gonna put this name. This is my cluster name. Again, I'm doing it very specific so that I don't draw traffic for more database clusters than my current one. Very, very easy and straightforward. US East 1. I'm going to choose the same client VPC, and I'm going to create the hosted zone. And now again, Jamie, I will need your help while I'll do the magic in the backend to create the alias records for that really ugly DNS name. Let's see if anyone has questions. Yeah.
So one thing too to remember as Alex is doing this, she's associating the DNS name to the client that's going to be making the calls. Make sure you don't also reassociate it back to the original VPC where that name is actually valid, right? So you just got to be very, very careful when you're playing the DNS game, because as we know, once you screw up DNS, just like anything else in networking, you screw up everything. So just be very, very careful when you're doing these steps. Map it all out. It's a good idea to map it out before you're making these changes. That's why Alex also went through and she was creating all those resources before, and then she was just using the drop downs. She's doing a very, very similar thing right here as well for applying the DNS names.
Yep, exactly. Let's do this.
TechFueled is asking, are we also going to demo the VPC endpoints of type resource use case?
Nope, not in this one. That's a private link way to consume resources. It's like exactly like the classical private link. Nothing
except for the resource
nothing
gateway.
weird there.
But you know what? If you guys want, we can certainly set up a dedicated session to go over all things private link, things that have changed, resource endpoints, games with resource endpoints, things you shouldn't do that Jamie always does and gets in trouble for. So we can definitely do something like that as well. If you guys are up for it, just let us know in the chat if this is something you're looking for or you want.
Absolutely. Okay, I have one more command here to do.
We've got a vote. So one person, a couple of people are already even saying that they want us to do that. So Alex, if you wouldn't mind, remind us.
Yes, for sure. We will do that. We will definitely do that.
Yeah, I've got some crazy things that I used to do in demo with private link. Like, here are the things that you can do, but probably shouldn't.
For sure. Okay, let me see here. The DNS name. Okay, this was good. And I'm going to do the quad A record as well.
So yeah, Alex is still in the process of matching up that custom or private DNS name with the one that was actually supplied by VPC Lattice so that you can get back to human readable, usable names again.
Here we are. We have the Service Network Resource Association and everything looks good. So now let's see if this works. Nice.
There we go.
And I also have quad A. And this also works. So I'm going to do my SQL query
Your
here.
SQL query, here we go. That was a copy and paste. I see that.
Of course. I'm not that good with databases.
Select star from star where star equals star. That's like what you find in most web pages these days.
Exactly. Yep, here I am. I've connected to the database. I am in the client VPC. I use the custom domain name. Everything is amazing. Okay.
There's a good question from Ken, by the way. You would know this much better than I would. Is there any GitHub repo to demo VPC Lattice different use cases like this demo here?
I think that there is a repo with the use cases that we've put in the initial blog, in the build secure scalable networks with Amazon VPC Lattice. There's a bunch of repos from on the container side. So there's a lot of use cases. I don't know if we have one consolidated repo for everything, but that's actually a really good idea.
That is a good idea. I do know that there's a couple of other blogs that are in flight too that have some solutions with it, with CloudFormation and that also you can use and edit to your whim and play with.
Yep, exactly. Okay, now we have that profile that we've created. We can also associate this private hosted zone with that profile. I'll just do that for consistency's sake. It is really important if you have multiple VPCs associated with your service network. If you associate them with the profile, then they will inherit all the profile configuration, i.e., all the private hosted zones. Instead of you going and associating every private hosted zone to every VPC and making this a bit more cumbersome from management perspective. Now, last but not least, we have our third demo. I'm not going to switch back to the slides. We have a second client VPC here who wants to consume this service network and the services and resources in the service network using a service network endpoint. This is the new type of access for the service network in addition to the service network association, which we've used for the first client VPC. Super straightforward, exactly like you would create an endpoint in private link, but instead of it being a private link type endpoint, it will be a service network endpoint. So let's see how that goes. You folks see that I already have a bunch of S3 gateway endpoints, and I have an instance connect endpoint here, which I was using for testing. But for shared services, SNE, we call it, you'll see a lot us talking about SNEs and SNAs. SNE Service Network Endpoint, SNA Service Network Association. Both of them are supported. So I give it a name, and I'm going to go here for the service network. It's a new type of endpoint. Works very similar to the existing ones. I'm going to select the service network. I'm going to select the VPC. This is my client 2 VPC. Client 1 uses the association. Client 2 uses the endpoint. I'm going to enable DNS names because for resources defined by ARN, private DNS will magically work with the service network endpoint. Please let us know your feedback related to private DNS support for VPC Lattice. We cannot talk about roadmap again, but we'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Reach out to your account team, and we'd love to talk more. Let's select the subnets again. As for any subnet that any endpoint you create, you select the subnet. I've selected again the private subnets. Hopefully, I select the private. Yes, private. I'm going to create it as dual stack, of course. And I'm going to use the default security group, which I know already that allows traffic. I'm not going to adventure into unknown territory. And I'm going to create the endpoint. Now, while this endpoint is creating, we'll see that we will have a bunch of associations here coming up as the endpoint is creating. Once these associations are going to become available and accessible, we'll go and test it from the client 2. So let's log into client 2 here. Again, IPv6, then EC2 Instance Connect. You know it. I'm going to skip the private DNS part for the service network endpoint, but I'll show you folks how to do that. And we'll be back talking about that for sure. Let's see here.
We do have 7 minutes left, so I'm giving you a time.
Oh, 7 minutes. I think we'll make it. I think we can do it. I think we can do it. The service network endpoint is now in available state. Let's see here the associations. The associations are accessible, and here is the awesome part around them. So we have an association ARN, and see, we should have also a bunch of things as we go here on the right. Really easy to miss. If you're using the CLI, you do describe, you'll get all the information. Yeah. But here in the console, you'll see that you have to scroll all the way to the right here to get the DNS name. And this is fun. So the DNS names, the FQDNs that Lattice manages for resources and services also have now the VPC endpoint ID. So it's right. VPC endpoint ID and Service Network Service Association, Service Network Resource Association, etc. Now, these names fairly useless because no one remembers them. very not recommended to hard code them in your code or anywhere else because they're automatically generated. But we have here the private DNS part. And I mentioned it works for the database cluster because it is defined by ARN, right? So let's test it. Let's see. If we copy this and we go to our client 2 here and we do a dig, it's 10.4.142.207, and it's actually an IP address from my client VPC,
A
right?
local
10.4.
VPC.
Yep, it's the IP address of the service network endpoint, right? Therefore, if I want to connect to the instance, I'll be able to absolutely do it. Now, for services, again, we need to do the private DNS part, and in private DNS, the only thing that changes is instead of that FQDN that's generated for the service itself, you will use the FQDN that has the VPC endpoint in it. So if I just do a dig here, right, you'll see, again, I have the IP address, an IP address of the service network endpoint in my local VPC. Ta-da!
Nice. And there
That
you
is
go.
it.
One thing to note too, when
Everything
you're
works.
looking at the service network endpoints or resource endpoints, they are sub-interfaced. So you'll get one endpoint, but they could have multiple entries within that deal. So if you're used to using the old Cisco's or you were doing any advanced networking on Linux boxes or any Unix boxes, sub-interfacing is basically creating a small virtual interface, part of a master interface. Very, very similar.
Yep, and this is what we've created.
So
It
we're all
works.
set. And you did it on time.
On time. So you folks, and I actually have more time. Like I could technically have 3 more minutes. But this is how easy it is to set up all these new constructs in Lattice. There was no rocket science. You can get started with it today. Super exciting how easy it is to put network connectivity in place without actually knowing networking and IP addresses and routing and all that stuff. The only thing you kind of need to know is DNS. But if you're an app owner, you probably already know that.
You
So
need to know
that's
that.
really
Yeah.
nice.
You don't exist in a world today without DNS.
Yeah, DNS is key.
Yeah, very, very cool. Nice, nice. Yeah, so there's no excuse, folks. You saw how easy it was. Alex just did it. 1, 2, 3, not a problem. And everything wasn't pre-canned. She created the service network. She created the resource gateway. And a lot of times when we do these demos, we have to have things that are pre-canned because it takes so long. This obviously did not. So
Yep,
no
it was
excuses.
great.
Get out there and play
Actually,
with it.
the only thing that I had already created was that database because I'm that good at databases.
Yes, but this is not a database demo, right? This is not an EC2 demo. This is a
True,
Lattice
true,
demo. So
true,
there
true.
you go. There you go.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for hosting me today. This was really fun. I hope
Yeah,
everyone
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
it as much as I did.
I absolutely did. We'll definitely have to do more of these together in the future. And if anybody wants to see anything else at Lattice, I did see there was a whole bunch of folks that want us to do everything with private links and resource endpoints. So maybe Alex will come back together and you'll host me and I'll show everybody how to break
Yeah,
their accounts. It'll be fun.
that would be amazing. I can't wait.
Yeah, it'd be a good time. It'd be a good time. So is there any closing thoughts that you have, Alex, for everyone before we end the show?
Oh, Uh, after we end the show, your folks are going to have the on-demand video on the routingloop.net. Go ahead, and if you haven't tested Lattice yet, go ahead, test it out, create all of these constructs. The service network is free of charge. The resource gateway is free of charge. You will be incurred charges for your service configuration and your resource config, and databases, of course, and your EC2 instances. A lot of those are part of free tier for EC2, and as long as you're not transferring petabytes of data day one, you can absolutely test it, see how it works, see if it fits your use cases, and give it a spin.
And remember, cross AZ charges behind Lattice. There aren't any.
Yeah, they're none. Yep.
All right, thanks all. See you next week.
Thank
Same
you.
bat time, same bat channel.